Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session dedicated to evaluation of transformational climate finance initiatives through the case of the TFSC program. My name is Lauren, and I will be your moderator for the next 30 minutes. Thank you for joining us. I'm pleased to introduce our speakers today. Anne-Sophie Kervella, Evaluation Officer at Agence Française de Développement, AFD, and Claire Echalier, Financial Systems Project Officer at AFD2. Anne-Sophie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lauren, and thanks to all of you who have joined us today. We are delighted to have the opportunity to participate to this Evidence for Climate Action platform and to share the results of the midterm evaluation of the Transforming Financial System for Climate program. As the AFD group is firmly convinced of the value of monitoring and evaluation for improving collective action and accountability, and namely in the area of climate change. Maybe before going into more details about the scope and the results of this evaluation, Claire, you can briefly describe the TFSC program?
Thank you very much, Anne-Sophie, and thank you very much for the invitation to speak today. So yes, the TFSC program was in fact initiated in 2017, 2018 in the wake of the Paris Agreement. Indeed, the Paris Agreement confirmed for all donors the importance of financial systems in helping to drive the transition of economies towards low emission and climate resilient development, and more broadly supporting the achievement of Article 2.1c on the alignment of all financial flows with climate objectives. So basically capitalizing on the long history that AFD had on working with financial institutions, mainly up until then, working on earmarked credit lines, for example, dedicated to the sustainable use of natural resources or energy finance. AFD decided to launch the TFSC program and mobilized funding from the GCF back in 2019. So the TFSC program covers 17 emerging and developing countries and has a total budget of over 650 million euros, 240 million of which come from the GCF, and the rest is AFD's funding. And it targets local financial partners, financial institutions, mainly commercial development banks, microfinance institutions also. And the objective is to help them to scale up climate finance. So in addition to the concessional finance that AFD was bringing together with GCF, the project was expected to help raise an additional 860 million euros from financial partners themselves, but also from end borrowers through equity mainly. As previously mentioned, the TFSC program contributes to achieving the objectives of the Paris Agreement, and we expected to do that through three main sub-objectives. The first one was the financing of adaptation projects in the agriculture, the water management, infrastructure sectors. The second one was on greening infrastructure, for instance, through energy efficiency projects, forestry programs, waste management, mainly focusing on the mitigation side. And third and last, we were also trying to target vulnerable populations and underserved beneficiaries, including women and individuals in more remote areas. So if we take a step back, more broadly, the goal of the program was to create a market for investments to increase the investments in these countries and to try to remove, by doing so, the financial and also the technical barriers that are being faced by financial institutions when it comes to supporting or investing in climate projects. Very concretely, the program is divided into two main components. There is one very large component, which is basically consists of concessional funding and long-term credit facilities for financial institutions with adapted financial incentives, for instance, lower interest rates or longer tenors, or even investment grants in some instances. And these are associated generally with eligibility criteria, which are tailored to the financial institutions and to the local context to try to support climate investments. And then the second component, which is as important as the first one, is the technical assistance that comes together with the credit lines that we're providing, and which seeks to create or to foster a favorable environment to ensure the development of climate finance in the long term, and to make sure that what we're doing today, or what the financial institutions are doing today, is long lasting and will be able to be done later on when the program is over. These technical assistance activities include a lot of things, but among them you'll have support to the identification and development of eligible projects, the support to the definition and implementation of climate strategies, for instance, or the assistance to the development of specific tools and frameworks, for example, on the environmental and social risk management side. Just maybe a quick focus on the way we selected the banks that were going to benefit from this program. Basically, what the main criteria was their motivation. And we really tried to look at to try to understand what these banks' ambitions were, or what their ambition was, and how they were considering, and how willing we found them to be to integrate climate at every level of their organization. So from the strategy level down to the operations and to the financing itself. Looking, for instance, at their willingness to develop new green products or new green financial services that are additional to what they would be doing in business as usual circumstances. Ultimately, this way, we were hoping to maximize the impact of the program, helping to remove, as I said earlier, the technical and financial barriers that these institutions are facing, and try to support them in implementing and turning this ambition into something very concrete, into actual transformational change and climate-friendly investments. And just before I stop, and I hope that answers your question, but as of 2024, December 2024, we had 10 projects that had been approved in 7 different countries by AFD's board with the TFSC, the GCF's financial resources.
Thank you, Claire. Given the ambitions of this TFSC initiative, as you pointed out, conducting a midterm evaluation seemed appropriate in order to assess the progresses made to date towards targeted objectives, and to adjust the program as much as possible for its second phase of implementation to promote the achievement of the expected results. As an accredited entity, AFD Group had also committed to the Green Finance Fund to carry out this midterm evaluation of the program in accordance with GCF evaluation policy and guidelines. And it was with this in mind that the AFD Group launched the evaluation at the end of 2024. It covered the design and implementation of the program to date, and so to meet 2 main objectives: to provide recommendations for the continued implementation and for similar future operations, and also to demonstrate accountability for the funding provided by both AFD and GCF. The evaluation therefore focused on 6 main areas: alignment with the context of intervention and with also needs and priorities of stakeholders in the target countries, country ownership, consistency with the national strategies and also with the climate policies of both the AFD Group and GCF, as well as complementarity with the other initiatives supported in climate finance by other development partners. Efficiency of implementation in terms of resource mobilization, governance mechanisms, monitoring and reporting systems, etc. Effectiveness in terms of achievement of results, but also in terms of whether the program is on track to demonstrate its contribution to the paradigm shift in alignment with the Paris Agreement. And finally, inclusion of gender equality. And it was conducted by Technopolis, which is a consulting firm with extensive expertise in evaluation of projects and programs supporting financial systems in developing and emerging countries. And it has just been completed. So maybe you can, Claire, share with us the main operational lessons that were drawn out of the evaluation?
Yes, thank you very much. And as you just mentioned, Anne-Sophie, I think this type of evaluation is really, really precious for us. And by us, I mean us operational teams, as it helps us to learn and improve our practice. And I see three main reasons how this is usually done. The first one is that evaluations can help us really take a step back to identify what's working well and what's not working quite as well, and to try to identify some very practical corrective measures to inform decision making and to increase the results and impact of the project. And that's particularly true when it comes to midterm evaluations, such as the one that's currently being carried out on TFSC. So, for instance, thanks to the midterm evaluation on the TFSC, we now know that a certain number of things are being done right, and that certain outcomes are already being already out there. For instance, the program helped to raise awareness. It supported the creation of green lending units, and in some cases, it also helped us and helped the financial institutions build their capacity, introducing new tools to align their operations with climate objectives. These are areas that we want to obviously keep working on because we know that it's working and that we want to build on in the coming years. On the other hand, the evaluation also highlighted some difficulties that we might be facing. And just to name perhaps one, we realized that across the different geographies, we're having it's quite challenging for us to achieve the targets that we'd set out in terms of impact on adaptation. And so this is definitely something that we want to work on to improve. For instance, by trying to dedicate a larger portion of the technical assistance that we have, which is quite a substantial budget, to supporting capacity building in the identification and the appraisal of such adaptation projects, which we all know can sometimes be a bit more difficult to show, or the business case of which might be a bit more difficult to evidence. The second reason why I think these evaluations can be particularly helpful is because they can help us draw lessons from what's being done in other countries or with other financial institutions to try to establish some form of best practice and again to seek to inform decision making. Just to take an example, in South Africa, for instance, the evaluation showed that the program was more advanced than in most of the other countries that we're working on, or at least is advancing at a quicker pace. And this was attributed in the evaluation by the fact that the practical modalities that had been defined between the bank and the technical assistance, or the consultant carrying out the technical assistance, were probably a little bit more supported a better dialogue between the two. So it's very practical and very insightful information for us, and what can seem to be a success, well, what is a success factor in South Africa might also be seen as a practical area of improvement in other geographies. So we can learn from that and then try to duplicate it elsewhere. A very quick win, but very useful for us in our operations. And last, another reason why these sorts of evaluation can be very helpful is because they can help us identify critical success factors for the deployment of a project in a selected country. Typically, when it comes to the TFSC program, which was deployed, as I mentioned, in several countries, the uneven pace of deployment from one country to another means that we now have a sample of countries where the project has already been implemented that we can look back to, and that can help us identify some potential game changers for projects in countries where we're not quite as advanced. And again, to give you an example on this, here the evaluation highlighted the importance of having very early implementation of technical assistance to support the identification of pipeline, the preparation of projects, the initiation of capacity building activities. And looking back at what has been done in the earlier implementers of the TFSC program, or in the countries where the program is currently being implemented, can actually help us identify what can or should be done in countries where the program is just starting. So it's also really helpful in that regard.
Okay, so I understand that the evaluation was really useful identifying practical operational lessons to help support the efficient and effective implementation of the projects? Did it also enable you to engage strategic thinking about the group's approach to supporting financial institutions in their climate-friendly initiatives?
Yes. Yeah, I think that the TFSC program marked a real milestone for us. I mean, because between the AFD GCF relationship, it was the first programmatic approach between our two institutions, and it also involved a very sizable budget. But also, it's particularly important because at AFD, since when we started initiating the TFSC program, we institutionally have also been progressively evolving towards more transformational action, or at least seeking to have more transformational action, or in other words, action that has longer lasting and more qualitative impacts on transforming actors and transforming systems as a whole. Just to give you an example here of what we've been doing in parallel, we've, for instance, at AFD been developing a specific approach called the pro-climate approach to mainstream climate change within financial institutions, strategies and their organizations. And the idea behind this pro-climate approach is that we condition the disbursement of funds to the achievement of a certain level of ambition or to the achievement of certain climate-specific objectives, rather than based on the eligibility criteria that will have been defined to use the funds on a certain type of projects. So this, for AFD, implies quite a substantial change of paradigm, and it means that we need to focus more of our efforts on efforts and budget actually on the actions that don't necessarily have measurable outcomes, such as probably financing projects would, but we would focus more with transformational credit line. We'd focus more budget and technical assistance to the dialogue and to the actual support that we're providing to our counterparties. So the evaluation of the TFSC program is particularly valuable to us in that regard, and as it provides very thorough analysis of the main gaps and opportunities that can exist when designing such transformational programs, non-earmarked credit lines, but it would also apply, some of the recommendations might also apply to policy dialogue, for instance. And having this evaluation means that we're able to now look back on 5 years of operations in 8 different countries, and it's quite unique in the sense that it helps us to structure future operations with such transformational impact. For instance, through the evaluation, or thanks to the evaluation, we now we've identified some new instruments that we could be working on, or we can provide our counterparts to help them get rid of the barriers, the main investment or financial barriers that might exist in the financial system. So I'm thinking of different types of financial instruments, such as guarantees or insurance or this type of instrument. But also the evaluation confirmed the importance for us when structuring and designing the project of making sure that we really have a bottom-up approach and that we really spend enough time identifying the needs, the local context, having a really thorough dialogue with the final beneficiary, as I said earlier, trying to identify the ambition that they have as well, to better design the program and have it be appropriate by being owned by the financial counterpart. Sorry. This type of approach fosters more ambition and more impact. Also comes with quite a few new challenges, such as ensuring additionality, measuring impact, the impact of our projects. These are challenges that are quite top of mind when you think about this change of paradigm. But maybe, Anne-Sophie, it's probably for you to tell us a bit more about the implications that this type of new transformational approach can have especially on our monitoring and evaluations.
Yes, thank you, Claire. Actually, this approach seems very promising, but as you just underlined it, it appears to me that it accentuates the challenge that was already identified in this midterm evaluation regarding the monitoring and evaluation of results. In this regard, I'd like to inform our audience that the AFD Group adopted a new monitoring and evaluation policy in 2024, which should enable us to better assess the effects of these transformational approaches. Firstly, it underlined the fact that it is essential to strengthen the links between the project design, monitoring, and evaluation. This involves identifying and describing the expected changes in the transformation path that is adopted by the project owner, the quantitative and qualitative indicators that can be used to assess them, and the sources and methods for collecting the information needed at the appraisal stage of the project. It also includes designing a monitoring and evaluation system with adequate resources, particularly human resources and operating procedures from the outset of the projects as well, and providing appropriate support for its effective implementation where necessary. Monitoring project implementation on this basis improves project management throughout implementation, thanks to a continuous analysis of constraints and drivers, and it ultimately facilitates project evaluation. Secondly, strengthening this continuum is all the more effective when the monitoring system and evaluations are designed and implemented with all project stakeholders and in line with the needs, tools, and capacities available. This includes, of course, project owner at first and foremost, but also all the other partners involved in a project, both local and international. And the AFD Group promotes partnership-based evaluations. Eventually, the AFD Group promotes tailor-made evaluations, which means conducted at the appropriate time within the most relevant scope, using the appropriate methods in order to provide answers to the issues that are actually encountered by stakeholders, and for the result of the evaluations to be the most useful as possible. This evaluative approach is already being applied to new projects supporting financial systems, and we will continue to implement such approach in the next projects to improve our action and this transformational approach. Thank you.
Thank you both for this very rich exchange. The midterm evaluation of the TFFC program has not only assessed results, it has really guided learning. So we'll now open the discussion. So please feel free to post your questions in the chat box, and I will read out a selection for our speakers. So the first selected question is can you talk through the decision process for conducting a midterm evaluation? Is it standard or mandated, or was the involvement of the GCF a factor? And also, did the evaluation assess the level of private capital mobilized by the concessional finance? So, Anne-Sophie, maybe it's for you regarding the process of midterm evaluation.
Thank you, Lauren. Well, the involvement of the GCF definitely was a factor to conduct this evaluation, since it was actually a commitment that the AFD Group took at the very beginning of the project. However, AFD is promoting, as I said earlier, evaluation that are tailor-made, which means that can be conducted at the right time when questions are raised during implementation. For example, we can actually decide to conduct a midterm evaluation to have, information about the levers and the difficulties that are faced, and maybe to adjust the project if need be. So it is something that AFD is also promoting in the new evaluation policy that was adopted. So actually, it's both AFD and GCF that were really keen on conducting this midterm evaluation, all the more as the program, as Claire underlined, was really ambitious, and one was unique. Actually, we had to learn from this implementation, this first phase of the implementation. Regarding the private funds, actually, this evaluation took place at a time when sub-projects were just starting for most of them. So we couldn't actually go into a lot of details regarding implementation of the sub-projects themselves. So we decided to focus on the program. So we have not information on that so far, but a final evaluation of the program will also be conducted in a few years from now.
Thank you, Anne-Sophie. I have a second question, maybe for Claire. So what are the main recommendations that operational teams will take forward to achieve greater transformational action, do you think?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. It's a great question. I think I probably touched on the overall answer to that one earlier, but I can dig a little bit deeper. I think so far from the results we have from the evaluation, the main probably recommendation that we'll carry on for future projects was the importance of technical assistance and the importance of dedicating sufficient time and energy for it to be deployed as early on as possible. And that's important for several reasons. I think first because it helps initiate that dialogue, which to us is all the more important if you want to foster deep change, institutional change within the financial institutions that we're working with. It's very important to have these technical assistants that are on the ground and ready to work with the teams and to develop their capacities and the training and to organize the different sessions that are needed for the financial institutions to be ready to deploy the program and to own the program as well, ultimately. I think maybe the second reason for which this is particularly important is because it also helps from a very practical point of view. The technical assistants help the financial institutions teams to identify, appraise the projects that are ultimately going to be financed through the credit lines. And having this technical assistance in place very early on is something that can also help us build, well, together with the financial institution, obviously, or help the financial institution rather together with us, build the right pipeline that can be financed and make sure that the objectives that we set out together can be achieved. As I mentioned, we're facing more challenges to find bankable adaptation projects that we can finance, and with the right technical assistance in place, that can be something that can be more easily done, or at least we can spend more time working on it together. So I really think that having this continuous dialogue between the technical assistance, between the financial institution and also with ourselves is really important. And we, through TFSC, tried to make sure that the technical assistance was owned by the financial institutions as far as we could, but we definitely take on the recommendation of having it in place as early as possible.
Thank you. Thank you both for your thoughtful contributions and to our audience for these excellent questions. We've reached the end of our session. And in the spirit of keeping to schedule, we'll conclude here. So thank you again for joining us today, and please stay tuned for the next session in this series. Thank you.
Thank you.